This part I'd like to really focus on is the ear, like how the hair cells, this stuff, the tip links and how they work.
Yeah. So, okay, so. Alright, so you understand how, like, the cochlea is basically this snail shell thing, and it's filled with fluid, basically. And when the third ossicle, the stapes, presses on the oval window, right?
Yeah, it creates a sound, waves.
Yeah, it creates a frequency within the fluid, right? And that frequency hits, depending on what the frequency is, hits different parts of the cochlea. The apex hitting like the lower ones and the higher ones on the beginning, right? And what this does is it creates like a mechanical movement of the tectoral membrane and the basal surface of the
Basilar membrane.
Yeah, basilar membrane, and causes it to come in contact with these hair cells, right?
Yeah.
And so, and basically all this hair cell, it's basically a mechanical opening of ion channels. In this case, we're talking about potassium. And so, let's see, so, okay, so what we're doing is, so all these hair cells, it's like a group of them, and they're made up of these stereocilia cells. And it's basically like when that cell moves to the side, it basically mechanically opens that potassium channel,
Okay.
which generates action potential and signal and fires and goes through the nerve to the brain. We interpret it as sound. Now, with sound, there's two things that affect it, right? There's frequency and amplitude.
Amplitude.
Right. So what is frequency? What does this frequency give us?
That's your pitch.
Pitch, right? So high or low sounding sounds, but they're at the same volume, right? So what gives us volume?
Amplitude.
Amplitude, right? So if the waves have higher crests, it'll be louder, or they'll move the tectoral membrane more, move the more hair cells, so more stimulation, more action potentials, more sound. Right?
Okay.
And so that's what's going to give you your volume. So different pitches, it doesn't matter what pitch they are, they don't typically damage. Damage usually comes from amplitude, right? For example, because your range is about, 200 hertz to like 20,000 hertz?
I think
What did they say?
we had 20 to 120 hertz. Oh no, you're right. You're right. 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Yeah, that's
So
frequency.
you're thinking of decibels, I think.
Yeah,
right?
decibels. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what our range of what most humans can hear. Anything below this, you don't hear it. Anything above this, you can hear it. But if these frequencies were to go, it wouldn't like if you heard something below this or above this, it wouldn't damage, right? It just wouldn't be received at all, right?
Gotcha.
But if within this range you had an amplitude that was really high, that's where the decibels come in. I think it says like,
This one.
just starting at like 100 or so is when you start getting damage and pain from the sound, right? Because
Yeah.
you're basically just having overstimulation of your cochlear nerve, right? So, and then the hair cells can be damaged and stuff, like heard of ringing of the ears and stuff, or tinnitus. It's usually when like hair cell is damaged, and so there's maybe a permanent deformity in it or whatever.
So it's constantly open.
Yeah, and so it's like causing just like a constant sound or noise, and that can also influence pain and like headaches and stuff like that. But so does that kind of clarify that a little bit, or
Yeah.
a little bit? Is anything unclear?
No, that seems pretty clear.
Okay. And you have a similar thing going on with your semicircular canals.
Okay.
They're basically extensions of the cochlea, right?
Yeah.
These big loops. But they're not involved with sound, they're involved with
Balance.
balance, right? Because basically, instead of being struck by a sound vibration, the fluid in the semicircular canals is like thick, right? And in the canals, you've got these just hair cells kind of lining the whole thing. And this fluid, right, it's kind of like this viscous fluid, as it moves across these hair cells, it stimulates them and relays to your brain like the position, right?
So are the hair cells doing the same potassium channels and everything?
Yeah, I believe so. It's the same type of thing. Let's see.
Stereocili.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's really similar. But basically, so like if you were to tilt your head like this, because you've got canals going this way, and obliquely,
Yeah.
and so any direction your head's in, it's going to cause movement initially, right? And so when you move your head this way, it gives you the feeling, in a sense.
Your side.
Yeah, but it's not the only one, right? You also have your sight and your proprioception, right? That lets you know where your body is, and these three things work together. But sometimes you can get like malfunctioning signals, right? Like if you were to spin really fast, get dizzy, and you stop, what makes you feel like you're moving is that this fluid is still moving in your semicircular canals. So it's sending the signal that you're moving, but you're not, and so it's like, and your eyes start to like go like this and stuff, and that's kind of where dizziness comes from. It's called vertigo. It's when you have the sense of movement that doesn't exist, and it can come from any of those three, but it's typically the semicircular canals. Or one thing you can have is like if you had some type of deposit, like a calcium deposit, like develop on one of these hair cells, then like it can cause vertigo. Like no matter how you orient yourself, that thing is still like stimulating hair cells, so it makes you feel like dizzy, basically. But sometimes the solution is just to orient your head in a weird way to make it like drop off and go down, whatever.
Or spin the opposite direction.
Yes, I guess. But yeah, so maybe if you spin really fast and then you spin the other way for a little bit, it would like balance it out. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of the idea behind that. But I'm trying to think. Yeah. Good on that?
Yeah. So, okay, you have your crista ampularis, right? Is that a similar thing, or is this something different?
That's so let's see. Yeah, it's responsible for the fluid movement, but I mean you also have hair cells lining along the semi. Just see the base of it within each. Yeah, so
I guess it's kind of like a valve that allows the fluid to move back and forth.
yeah, but I think that's where the biggest concentration of the nerves are, kind of at the base, right?
Yeah.
So maybe not lining the whole. I thought it was lining the whole ones, but I think it's actually just in that ampulla. And the cupula is like the
gelatin stuff on top of it.
want to know, I was discussing this with another tutor, but the different types of lingual papillae, like, are you supposed to know all of them? Or?
Yeah, I would know like which,
Taste buds?
yeah, like which ones.
Your valate, your fusiform,
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's
fusiform.
at least know that like kind of like filiform, for example, doesn't actually have taste receptors on it.
Yeah,
And
is that
that-
spice?
No.
Or wait, no, never mind, sorry, keep going.
Yeah,
I
so
apologize.
no, you're right. So and kind of the general location, right? So for the most part, you've got on the surface of your tongue, you've got filiform and fungiform,
Yeah.
right? The filiform basically fills in the space in between the fungiform, but the fungiform are the ones that actually have taste receptors.
Mhm.
And then the foliate are on the sides of the tongue, and then the valate are the big, huge ones in the very back of your tongue. So, yeah, I mean, I generally know that, just know that, I mean, most of it's going to be made up of fungiform and filiform, right? And then the foliate's on the edge of the tongue. But as far as like what taste receptors are in each one's, I'll have to get this.
And then, I'm sorry, I'm like bouncing around
No,
here.
you're
It says 4 major brain changes that occur as a result of addictions. So, what does that mean? Like, would it mean like the different parts of the brain? That
Yeah, it's talking about like chemical changes,
It's like the
physical
amygdala
changes.
and
Yeah, and he gave you, wait, you're Anderson's?
yeah.
I believe he gave you like a supplemental reading on iLearn. I would check because other students have had that same question. We looked it up. There's a supplemental reading on the brain.
Mhm.
And when you open it up, it's kind of a big document, but just do like Control F and go to like type in like addiction, and it'll like word for word say these are the 4 changes from addiction.
Yeah.
Because it's not in the textbook.
Well, I know he gave us like what causes something to be an addiction. Like
Yeah.
there's 4 of those. but-
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it should go in there, and then the next question talks about. So one like like internet pornography and stuff like that, like why it's so addictive, and it explains it
Yeah.
probably better than I can explain it in that supplemental reading.
Okay.
So
It's gonna have to do with the limbic system. Your
It has to-
yeah,
frontal cortex is being not being used as much, and your limbic system is taken over.
yeah, it's
It's still
the
dopamine you get, right?
yeah.
You start
It,
getting more dopamine from watching something.
well, like pornography, for example, it's kind of so your reward center, right? Is kind of like the natural man, right? To like, because you have a inborn desire to like reproduce, to eat, to survive, to have what you want.
Mhm.
But your frontal cortex is kind of what helps like reason how to get to those things.
Yeah.
Like if you want something, you don't just grab it from somebody and take it, right?
Mhm.
You get it in another way, right? Or if
They make a plan to like
Or if-
actually get something.
yeah, or like if you see somebody that you want to reproduce with, you date and you get married and stuff. You don't just like rip their clothes off and go for it. And that's what your reward center would kind of want you to do. But with like pornography, for example, because it's so stimulating. Because in nature, usually you don't have like 1,000 mates to choose from, and then you can just kind of pick them out. Kind of how like pornography is you can just scroll and click whatever you want, and so it's so stimulating because you have so many options and stuff like that. That it kind of overrides your frontal reasoning system. And a general principle with like neuroscience is that when axons are constantly firing, they develop pathways, and it makes it easier for them to fire. So like neurons that fire together wire together is the same. So like, and it's the same thing with developing a skill or memory, things like that.
Yeah,
If you
that's,
practice more and more, you generate kind of a deeper pathway. So it's kind of, yeah. But he goes into like more specific things that'll probably be on the test,
Mhm.
you know. that are in that reading, I
So
think, so,
just look that up.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.